It's Gina here, and I really want to jump in here. Let's see if anybody's able to hop on. I want to encourage you to have your eyes wide open right now in this season that is very full of animosity out there in the world. There's all kinds of opposition. Sometimes it can feel like you are in a war, like you're in a battle. And it's easy to take our eyes off of the living God who calls you to himself and desires to fill you with his spirit. And you can get annoyed at other people and feel like people are your enemy. And I want to encourage you to remember that those of us who claim to love God and walk in the power of God, hey, Superboy, my dear friend Dan, love to see you. It's easy to feel like people are our adversary, or it's easy to forget that the Bible says that if we claim to love God, who we can't even see, but we don't love people who we can see, then we're lying and the truth isn't in us. And this is a big deal because there's really only one commandment right now that fulfills all the law of the prophets. Well, two commandments, right? To love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength and all your might, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And it is so dangerous for us to get into a place where we're not loving our neighbor. Because in that place, we actually forfeit so much authority and so much power that is intended to flow to us and for us. You know, God's power towards us is unlimited, but we can limit it by withholding love and by choosing to walk separate from love. And so let's think about if people are not our enemy, right? Our battle is never against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers and spiritual forces in high places. That's why the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they're mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds and casting down imaginations and taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. This is so important. I had a friend tell me today that she found herself annoyed when she was walking through the neighborhood and saw a Black Lives Matter sign. And she's like, they're just trying to be activists. And then she repented. She caught herself and she thought, you know, there's things I don't like about the leadership of the organization, Black Lives Matter, but probably these people have a sign in their yard because their hearts are good and they believe that all people matter and they don't want to see people hurting. And so, listen, when we project the worst onto somebody, that's us walking outside of the power of love. We project judgment and we project thinking that we know more than we know. And it's so dangerous. I know this. I can't afford to take a step outside of love because every step outside of love is a step in sin. Think about that. Every step that you take outside of love, it's a step in sin. The wages of sin is what? It's death. God's not sitting around waiting to punish you. God, in fact, is holding not a single sin against you. The sin brings its own death. The Lord is saying, come to me, come to me. I'm not holding any sin against you. Do you know that as believers is supposed to be our message? Not walking around with signs telling people what sinners they are. Our message, our ministry is the ministry of reconciliation, where God is making his appeal through us. Be reconciled to God. So let's check our hearts and say, God, is there any single place where I have made people my enemy? Because I can't afford it. I can't afford it. I can't afford to block your wisdom. I cannot afford to block your power that's to flow to me and through me. I cannot afford to block your sound mind. When we do this stuff, we open ourselves up to torment, to darkness. If you ever feel like, I don't know what I'm going to do, I don't know what I'm going to do, I don't know why things aren't working out, and you're confused, boy, check and see, have you taken a step outside of love? It's the dangerous path to walk. Because there are three enemies. They are, let me see, they are the world, the flesh, and the devil. So let's just talk about that. What's that mean? The world is our enemy? I thought John 3:16 says God so loved the world. Yeah, he loves the people of the world just like he wants us to. His whole message to them is be reconciled to me. God loved that world that was destroyed by being sold out to the prince of the power of the air. So there's a world system that's very much against the children of the kingdom. And so the Apostle John wrote, if you love the world, or he says, don't love the world or anything in the world. If you love the world, then the love of the Father's not in you. So there's two different world, right? There's this world system, and then there's this earth full of people. That world system, it is our enemy. It's driven out of selfish ambition and vain conceit, selfishness, self-preservation. What about me? What about me? What about all this injustice? Man, be careful that you're not trading in the kingdom for a world system, because that world system is our enemy. Don't love the world or anything in it. What? We get so impressed by the world. We want to impress the world. We want them to like us. We want, if you want applause, if you're going to live for the applause of people, you'll die by the disapproval of people. Right. The world is our enemy. The world system is our enemy. The people of the world, man, God laid down his life for them. They're not our enemy. That is super important. Stay in love, stay in love, stay in love. The second enemy is your own flesh. Dear Lord, the third one we'll talk about is the devil. But let me tell you, a lot of times the stuff that we think is our enemy, it's just our flesh. And so what's our flesh? Remember, we're a three-part being. We are a spirit created in the image of God. We have a soul. That's our mind, our will, and our emotions. With our soul, we interact with people on an intellectual level. With our spirit, we interact with the spirit realm, with God himself. And we are living in a body. Our body's the flesh. And so with the unrenewed mind, our flesh is just going to team up with the unrenewed mind and triumph over our spirit. It's going to have ascendancy over our spirit that really we want to lead us, because that's our spirit that hears God's voice. And so that flesh, it's all your senses. It's born of this fallen world, and it is the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life. Those are the same three things that tempted Eve in the garden. When the devil's like, you'll be like God. This fruit, it looked good for food, and it looked pleasing to touch and taste. And the enemy said, you'll be like God. This boastful pride of life. So that is your flesh. It always wants to be gratified. It's never satisfied. It's greedy. It's fearful. Its senses have to be satisfied. If you're like, I never felt God's love. I'm hearing this a lot lately from people who can't find themselves able to trust God. I never felt God. Where was God? God has to do this. Oh my word, be careful. Sometimes we have, not sometimes, I think like almost all the time, we have completely lost sight of the absolute holiness of God. You want God to make himself real to you? I want him to make himself real to you. But be careful what you ask for, because his holiness will make you feel like you are going to hell. But the flesh is our second enemy. You're like, what are you talking about? Sometimes you won't. Sometimes his presence is so overwhelming and joyful and amazing, and most of the time. But sometimes, listen, God's a consuming fire. So your enemies are the world system, your own flesh, and the devil. That devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Listen, some of you have been pulled away and enticed to sin because you got out of your lane. You got out of your calling. I did. How was I drawn away and enticed? Through just absolute overwhelming scarcity. And so then I start judging Christian stuff, and I'm like, well, that's just so religious. I need to take my training from worldly truth so that at least I don't have a religious spirit, right? Like the enemy, he can lure you off of your path of what your divine assignment is. And you can think that you can't prosper doing your assignment because that's spiritual or that's creative or something. So you got to go over here in this corner and work to make money. Listen, that is not how the kingdom works. God works to absolutely provide for you in your assignment, in your lane. So your enemy, the devil, he prowls around like a lion. What kind of lion? I don't know. Maybe sometimes if you're drawn to things of faith, maybe he'll masquerade as a lion of the tribe of Judah. You'll think this is spiritual when it's deceptive. Or he will come, ultimately, always, Jesus said, to steal, to kill, and destroy. But resist him, standing firm in the faith. Listen, remember the weapons of our warfare, they are not of the flesh. They pull down strongholds. They're about taking every thought captive. Speak the truth, speak the truth, speak the truth. Why is the enemy after you? For the word's sake, because of the word that's planted in your heart and because of the offspring that God wants to bring through you. So I want to help you like recalibrate. I'm like your corner girl. I'm your corner girl today. That's why I always say I'm in your corner. Hey, if you're in this fight, it's a good fight of faith. The battle is not yours to win. The victory is yours to enforce. So I'm here, I'm like squirting water in your mouth and drying you off and telling you, go back in the fight with power and love and joy, knowing that you have the victory and nobody can snatch it out of your hand. No one's going to snatch those loved ones out of your hand. And you've got this. All right. I love you so much. Let me know. Let's see the comments. Nice to see you, Louise. Cindy, I love you. London. Yeah. Stepping out of love is a step in sin. And the wages of sin is death. That's a bummer. All right. I love you. Let me know if you want. Tell me what's been sort of the temptation for you to lose focus on what the real battle is that you've already won and that you sometimes think is the adversary. It's not people. DM me. Listen, I want us to just keep growing. You are so, so, so loved. All right. I love you. I'm in your corner. So keep playing to win and enjoy your game. Mwah.